joined now by someone who, amongst all sorts of other things, found herself working on what would become the very final episode of classic Doctor Who. But she's perhaps best known for her work on Angels as Janet Dickens. So I'd like to introduce Michelle Martin. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Are you managing to keep yourself busy during these rather odd times?
Well, yes, I am. Like most people, you suddenly discover the need to go through old boxes and photographs and sort out all stuff that has been sitting there for years and years. And suddenly you have this urge to bake and, rediscover old friends. So it's a strange time, but it's kind of throwing us all in the same pot. It's kind of a leveling as well.
Well, of course, yes, we're all going through this together. But perhaps now is a particularly good time then to take you back through to one particular show you worked on, which was Doctor Who, which was in 1989. Am I right in thinking there's something of a story as to how you got the part?
Yes, there was, because going back even further to 1981, I believe, I was playing the lead in Angels, and I was in that program for 2 years. And my mother always said to me to be nice to everyone, no matter who they were. You treat everyone the same, whether you're talking to the director, whether you're talking to the chap who makes you coffee. And I tried to stick by this. Anyway, the runner on Angels was a lovely chap called Alan, and very sweet, and we used to chat. After Angels finished, we lost contact, and I became an out-of-work actress, as a lot of us inevitably do. Years later, this is. So I decided to get a job at the Bush Theatre pub in Shepherd's Bush. And my thinking behind this was because it was right next door to Terry Wogan's, where he used to hold his show, his chat show. And it was also 2 doors down from a place called Threshold House, which is where it was a hub of the BBC, and all the directors used to hang out there. So my thinking was, when they came in and I was serving a pint, I could hand them the pint and say, "Have you got a job as well?" Anyway, one day, Alan walked in and I said, "Oh my goodness, hello, how are you?" Thought nothing of it. And then the next day, my agent rang me and said, "You've got an interview for Doctor Who." And it actually was at Threshold House, a couple of doors down. When I went to the interview, Alan was in the room. I said, "Alan, what are you doing pretending to be a director?" And he said, "I am the director." And I went, "Oh my goodness, how did that happen?" And he said, "Yes, I worked my way up, and look at me now." And I said, "Oh, that's brilliant." And he said, "Well, you know what? I never forgot how nice you were." And he said, as a thank you, he said, "This role was actually written for a little old lady. It's not much, but I've spoken to the producer and he's okayed it for me to offer it to you. We'll change it to a young girl playing the neighbour instead." And he said, "That's a thank you for the way you treated me." So that's how I got the job. And it was great fun doing. I did get teased a lot afterwards because it's more or less the last scene of the last episode of the last series of one of the most successful science fiction series. And my friend said, one small appearance from you, and that's it. You've ruined it. End of. So I did get teased a bit.
Was it nice to be involved with, what was a well-established and much-loved series?
Oh my God, it was so much fun, because I also got to go around the studio. And even though it was an outside shot, because a lot of the people from the crew were also connected with Angels as well. So it was very relaxed, and, they said, come in, have a look. So they had a Dalek hanging around. I don't think the Dalek was involved in that episode, but it was there. And I said, "Please, can I go inside?" So I went inside, and I was quite disappointed that all it is actually you just physically move it around yourself. I somehow expected it to be a bit more science fiction-like, but I mean, yeah, it's so much fun. It really is. I mean, it's so iconic. I mean, to even have the tiniest little part in it is just so cool, really. And my kids think I'm very cool. So.
And particularly now, the show's come back, it's perhaps bigger than it ever was, the
Yes.
attention even more so to it.
Yes. Well, I think it's just one of those things that everybody remembers their Doctor Who, and everyone was scared of it. I mean, I used as a little kid hide behind the sofa and, I'd be terrified of whichever monster was the Daleks, obviously they were, but Cybermen, I mean, there were so many that were just so scary, and John Pertwee was my era. Showing my age there a bit, but no, everyone loves Doctor Who.
Talking of doctors, how was Sylvester to work with? Because your scene was entirely with him.
Yes, well, interesting actually, because he used to be a teacher, and he came into the industry very late. He was teaching, and obviously teaching is very closely linked to acting, because you're up on a form of a stage, you're having to project your voice, you're having to keep the energy up, you're having to engage people's attention as a teacher. So it's not a far-flung idea to move into acting, and it certainly was something that he wanted to do. And he decided to give it all up and go to drama school. I think he was in his 40s easily. And this was pretty much his first job coming out of drama school. So talk about, winning the lottery. So he was very engaging, because, he was like a small child in a sweet shop. He didn't take anything for granted. Everything was an adventure, and he was really charming to work with.
Oh, good. Yeah, he's still such a character these days.
I haven't caught up with him in anything else, but living in Malta, our television is slightly different and stuff. But he's still working. He's still in things.
Perhaps most notably, he was in The Hobbit alongside Ian McKellen.
Oh, right. Well, okay.
Certainly, still very busy and doing all sorts of things.
Brilliant. That's good.
But I imagine your encounter with him on Doctor Who would probably just been a couple of days on location. Would you have been given any rehearsal time, or actually?
Oh yes. They did rehearsal. They used to rehearse in North Acton, and that was a cool place to be, because it was a building that had 5 or 6 different layers, and on each level was a different television program. So when you go to the lift, you look and it would say floor 1, Doctor Who, floor 2, Only Fools and Horses, floor 3, Top of the Pops, and you're going, wow, look at that, and of course floor 7 is the canteen, where we all mixed and had our lunch. So that was great fun going up there, as you can imagine, sort of trying to look cool and not go, oh, look, there's so-and-so, there's so-and-so. Yeah, good fun.
So how would you first find yourself in that world of television as an actress? How would you got there?
Well, I was actually born in Malta, and I lived here till I was 4 years old. And I came back to England in 1969, and my mother looked up an old school friend who had 2 sons the same age as my brothers, and they were going to a Saturday drama club. I was too young to stay at home, so they said, oh, she can sit in as well. So I sat in on this drama club. Anyway, shortly afterwards, this drama club approached both sets of parents and said, there's an agency attached to this. Would you like to put your children on the books? And we didn't quite understand what that meant back then. And they said, well, we give them interviews, and if you're chosen, then you're on television or on the theatre. And they're like, oh, okay. And I was 4 years old. Everything seemed an adventure, whatever. And I just seemed to be incredibly lucky from the offset, because the very first programme I got at age 4 was a huge BBC costume drama called The Life of Lord Byron, the poet. And I played his illegitimate daughter, Allegra. And half the role was in French and half in English. And of course, I couldn't even read. So my mother would read the script and I would repeat it parrot fashion back. And of course, that was a big exposure on television, and I hit newspapers. And then the next thing I know, I was getting lots of interviews, and I was doing lots of commercials. I think I did over 35 commercials as a child. And then acting and modelling came as well. And so it just sort of snowballed and snowballed. And when I was 13, I think I was, I might have even been younger, I got the Clifton House Mystery, which had the lovely Peter Sallis in. And that was, I think that was 6 to 8 weeks filming up in Bristol at HTV. So anyway, it continued through, and I got my interview with for Angels when I was 16. And that was extraordinary because they had actually put an advert in the newspaper, and they had basically said, anyone, just apply. And they had 35,000 applicants for my one role. My agent at the time had actually sent in my photograph, but it got lost in the piles. And the director at the time, Mary Ridge, her name was, went into the producer, who's called Julia Smith, went into her office with a photograph from a very old catalogue called Spotlight, which is like a telephone directory with photographs and your details. And it was a picture of me when I was 12 years old. And she said, what about her? Anyway, they called me in, I had the interview, and ta-da, I got the job. So pretty high odds.
Well, of course, you've done an awful lot as a child actress, but I imagine Angels was perhaps the big break.
Yes, I would say Angels was the biggest one because it was a soap opera. So obviously, you know, you're on television weekly, and you're at that slot where people are sitting down to have their dinner. You know, it's 7:30 of an evening. So consequently, in terms of how recognised you are, it went from there to sky high. I mean, you couldn't walk down the street without, you know, people chasing after you, asking for autographs, and I had all sorts of very strange experiences. I can tell you, I was playing a nurse, and there was one time where I was at home, I was still living with my parents, and there was a knock on the door, and my father answered, and there was a woman with 2 little children, and she said, I wondered if Michelle could come and have a look at my children because they're not feeling very well. I've just taken them to the doctors, but the surgery was closed. And I know your daughter's a nurse. Could she look at my... I'm like, no, I'm not real. I'm just a pretend nurse. So it is extraordinary, the impact that television can have, which is great. But it's also, you have to be very responsible, you know, with what you're portraying, you know, because it can affect people so dramatically.
Of course. And am I right in thinking that as part of getting the role, you actually had to spend some time in a hospital to get an idea of, you know, the reality of it all?
No. What we did is we had a full-time medical advisor, and she was on set every single day, and she would advise us and teach us how to do certain procedures, even down to making a bed. There is a certain way that you make a bed. There's a certain way that you turn a patient, that you take the temperature, that you do CPR. And so she would be there to teach us beforehand, either in the rehearsal room or on set. But no, we didn't walk around the hospitals. It was filmed in a hospital. It was, when we were on location, it was filmed in the Walsgrave Hospital, which I believe doesn't exist anymore. But, and then the studio stuff was a set in Pebble Mill, where they did Pebble Mill at 1. So that was fun too, because of course they used the lobby area of Pebble Mill at 1 to film. So you could stand in the background and see all their famous guests before running in to do your bit. So it was all a huge adventure. Imagine at 16, 17, it was like starry-eyed. You know, they had people. I remember watching Diana Dawes being interviewed there, and Laurence Olivier was brought in, and you think, I would never normally have been in these circles to ever, you know, talk to these people. So I'm very lucky.
The series had a fantastic regular cast and was, you know, perhaps the big break for many names, and it must have been exciting to be part of that, you know, working alongside people like Pauline Quirk, Claire Clifford, to mention a few.
Yes, it would go in stages, because Angels actually ran for 10 years, would you believe? So with the start of new series, in our year when we started, there was only one, I believe, one regular that was a rollover from the previous series, and then there were 5 new leads in it. So we really were all together. And I was the youngest, playing a student nurse, and my scenes were predominantly with Pauline Quirk. Now, I remember as a kid watching Paula's People and Pauline's Quirks, and I was thinking, oh my God, I've got a scene with Pauline. And it was like, hello, you've got 2 years worth of scenes with Pauline. You're playing flatmates, you know. So, yeah, no, it was fun. It was great fun.
I imagine must have been not only satisfying to be in, you know, such a well-known series and, you know, in a lead part, but also, you know, the nature of the storylines dealt with some very serious and gritty issues. It must have been very satisfying work from that point of view as well.
Yes, my storyline, I was playing a militant, left-wing, feminist, you know. So I got some great writing for a female. You know, I got to be a black belt in karate that punched, you know, boys that came onto me that irritated me, and you know, I got to be an expert at squash, and so, you know, I was beating all the men in the squash tournaments and everything. So in terms of storyline, I was quite spoiled. You know, I was an angel that could kick back, basically. The fallen angel.
And how does, you know, something like that compare to then being on stage? Because it's such a different response. Obviously, you know, with Angels, it's you know, when you're out of it, you're recognised as yourself for autographs, that sort of thing. But being on stage, you know, you're in front of an audience. That must be such a different feel.
It is. It is. There's an incredibly, because obviously I grew up from a small child only being in front of the television camera. I hadn't been to drama school. I had never stepped on stage. So I hadn't learnt the art of stage work. I had only learnt the art of acting within this kind of sphere. And it's incredibly different technique. And again, it's very different when it's film. Because if you can imagine, at a cinema, your face is the size of, you know, it's enormous in a cinema. So if you start doing big reactions, it's going to look appalling in cinema. So actually, you have to learn to underreact. So whereas it might feel natural to go, you know, you might not actually do it that big. So you have to kind of almost dampen down your instinct to keep it very subtle. And with the television, you could do it normally. So if I'm surprised, I go, and it's okay, it translates. But with the theatre, you've got 2,000 people sitting miles away that won't see you going, you have to go, you know, but it doesn't look crazy in terms of what they're saying. So it was really, for me, fascinating to learn whole new skill sets. And I fell into theatre comedy purely by accident. And I felt like I'd arrived. I just thought, wow, this is just the best thing ever. And people say, why? You know, you've done all these amazing, you know, had these experiences with film and television. I said, okay. I said, imagine when you tell someone a really good joke and they laugh and they really roar with laughter. How do you feel? You think, yay, you know, got the timing, got them laughing. Now imagine 2,000 people laughing at your joke. The noise is a physical boom, of people laughing. And you think, I did that. I've made you all laugh. It is a serious adrenaline rush. I absolutely love it. And I ended up concentrating on theatre for, I think, about 5 or 6 years thereafter. And I would drop in and out of little television things, small appearances in The Bill and a couple of other little television things. But it's the theatre, once it gets under your skin, it's quite addictive. It really is. And it can be quite difficult for people who have started in theatre to go to television, because it's very much easier to make your gestures bigger, but it's quite difficult when you're used to doing this and talking loudly like this to suddenly bring it back down. And you can certainly spot when you're working with a theatre actor. That's quite funny.
Having started out in television, did theatre then become the first love then?
I think it's difficult, because if an actor is going to be truthful, you do like to be recognised. And obviously television and film pay better. You get more kudos with film and television because you are recognised. So you do have that element, which is a big draw. If you were to say to me that you could have exactly the same benefits, i.e. the reaction, the pay, I would say every single time theatre, every single time, simply for that amazing, it's not only the adrenaline kick, it's the entire way of life. It's like, how people who are in the army or get thrown together, a group of people get thrown together in a circumstances, they always like I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. They always go on about, we'll be friends and we'll stay friends. And armies, it is very much like that. You are bonded in a common cause. And, you do find, it can be hard. I mean, I did a show that toured for nearly a year on the road. It was the #1 tour of Daisy Pulls It Off, which was the most wonderful play. It just won loads of awards in the West End, and we took it out. But we were in a different venue every week. And there were 22 of us in the cast. It's a big cast. And we were touring around. And that obviously, 6 months in, especially if you're doing 2 shows a day, could be quite exhausting. And, there was very much everyone looking after each other and pulling each other up. And if one was down, everyone would sort of rally around. And in fact, I'm still friends. I did that show when I was 20, and some of my best friends still are from that cast. They've all come out to see me in Malta. So it was a very, very bonding production. And you find that a lot. You'll hear a lot of actors saying that it is an industry where it's very transient, so you could all bond very, very quickly. But as soon as the production goes, you're all running off to try and find your next adventure, your next job, and pay the bills. And
so, having started off as a child actress, were there particular actors, directors that you were keen to work with or inspired you? And did you actually manage to work with any of those people?
I think, if I was being very truthful, I think as a child I wasn't mature enough to kind of think like that. As I said, I was just as starry-eyed as somebody who's not in the industry when I would come across and see somebody I knew. And in fact, my fellow actors saying, "You've really got to calm down now. You are on the same side of the fence." And I'm like, "I know, but look, it's so and so." I've always been excited by seeing big names, Sir John Mills, and I actually, having said that, I guess the person who was most inspiring was Omar Sharif. I was really, really, really lucky to get a role in a film called Top Secret with Val Kilmer and Omar Sharif. And it wasn't a huge role. In fact, I actually came one above Daisy the cow as herself in the credits. But I had the most amazing time. It was filmed in Pinewood Studios, and I'm hanging out behind the set with Val Kilmer and Omar Sharif. And Omar Sharif says, "Why don't we have a game of poker?" And everyone said, "Okay." And they grabbed a tea chest, because there's a lot of waiting around in the film industry. And they grabbed a tea chest, and everyone starts pulling out their dosh and sitting around. And I said, "Well, I didn't really know how to play. I was only 19. Omar sat down next to me and said, "Come on, I'm going to teach you how to play." And I thought, oh my God, Omar Sharif's teaching me how to play poker. That is seriously the coolest story I'm ever going to be able to tell anyone. And this game went on literally for a week. We would come into work and we would, carry on where we left off the day before and just keep going. I think quite a few people lost their entire wages that week, but it was worth it. And it was Val Kilmer's first ever film, so I got invited to his 21st birthday party. Obviously no one knew what such a big star he was going to become at the time. So I guess your magical moments are often on retrospect, because I don't think when you're in the moment and you're young, you actually appreciate how amazing your experience that you're having is. It's when you look back and you say, "Gosh, did I really do that?" And it just puts a big smile on your face.
Well, I think that's a lovely note to end on. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for your time, Michelle. It's been lovely to take you back to just a few of the jobs that you've done. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for asking me.